Meet Amara. She is full of functionality with space for everything. Let's take a closer look. Now, let's explore the incredible interior. Amara features a padded laptop sleeve, a zippered pocket, and a divided open pocket to keep everything in its place. But the real game changer is this modular organization system. You can add a large zippered pouch to divide the space, a cute coin purse, a water bottle holder, and a key leash. They are all available as separate patterns to customize your bag perfectly. With its smart external features like the magnetic closure and bag zippered pocket, building Amara is a true bag-making masterclass. Ready to create your own? Find the pattern link in the description and let's get started. "28 pages of pattern for one bag." I know it looks like a lot, but don't be scared. It's much easier than you think. This is our first step, creating the blueprint. Let's break it down. See these numbers and arrows? They are your best friends for laying out the pages after you have printed your pattern at actual size. This is crucial. Please double check that your printer is set to actual size or 100% scale before you print. This is the most important step to ensure your bag turns out perfectly. Before we move on to the next step, take a moment to lay out all your pattern pages, matching the arrows and numbers perfectly. Let's work in small, manageable groups of 4 pages at a time. For each pair, cut along the solid line on one page only, then overlap it onto the uncut edge of its matching page. When you align them perfectly, you'll see a neat little diamond shape form in the center of the pages. That's your sign that everything is lined up correctly. And just like that, the pages come together. For center pages that connects in 4 directions, you'll need to cut 2 sides, but the method stays the same. You will always overlap a cut edge from one page onto an uncut edge from its neighbor. And you don't have to build the whole thing at once. As soon as one piece, like the front panel, is assembled, cut it out. It makes the project feel much more manageable. isn't the most exciting part of sewing, but taking your time here to build a perfect blueprint is the real secret to a stress-free and enjoyable sewing experience later on. That's a lot of paper, right? No worries, just keep watching. I'll show you my best tips for keeping it all organized. Here are the fabrics I'm using: denim, canvas, waterproof canvas, faux leather, and a printed and a solid poplin. On your pattern pages, you will find my fabric map as a guide. If you are using your own choices, I highly recommend making your own list, deciding which fabric will be A, B, C, D, and F before you make a single cut. Let's start with fabric A, which form is denim. There are two optional sections in this bag that also need fabric A. If you plan to make the custom piping or the decorative shoulder strap, be sure to cut those long strips from your fabric first, before you cut any of the main pattern pieces. Here is an important tip to stay organized. Before cutting, sort your paper patterns into groups based on their fabric code. If a piece is labeled A, it goes into A group. If it's labeled A and B, it also starts in the A group. This way, you work through one fabric at a time. Once you cut a piece from fabric A, you can then move its pattern to the B group. This technique is excellent for managing a project with many pieces, ensuring you never miss a cut or get confused. This one goes to group B. Denim is a fantastic choice for bag projects. It's strong enough to carry your essentials and surprisingly easy to work with. Just a heads up, it does fray easily, which can be a little tricky. A quick but vital tip: if a pattern piece is needed twice, cut it symmetrically by folding your fabric. Oh, another important reminder: always match the pattern's grain arrow with your fabric's grain. This ensures your bag is strong, hangs properly, and won't twist or shift over time. hold on to those little fabric scraps. You'd be surprised how useful they are, like for making this small but important zipper edge cover. Feeling a bit overwhelmed, I get it. This is a big project with a lot of parts. Take a breath. We are building something amazing here, one step at a time. This is my fabric B, a happy blue and white printed canvas. It lightens up the denim but keeps everything balanced by pulling in that blue tone. It works as a perfect accent fabric. Surprisingly, it's quite similar to denim in structure. Really strong and a great choice for bags. They are both easy to sew with, but just like denim, the one downside is that it frays. Once you have cut all the fabrics for one pattern piece, just set it aside. Now for the fabric C, Foleda. This one's a bit tricky. Ironing is a big no, even from the backside or with a cloth. Heat will melt the surface, make it thin, and shorten its life. If you need to flatten it, use heavy books instead. For attaching interfacing, I prefer a basting stitch, but you can also use a fabric safe glue. Of course, feel free to choose your own fabric here. Just be sure to pick something strong, as this piece forms the bag's bottom and carries most of the weight. My fabric D is a basic, solid cotton called poplin. It's perfect for facings like the front pocket or laptop sleeve lining. Super easy to work with. But this is also your chance to have some fun. Go wild with a contrast color. Personally, I love a pop of red peeking out from inside a bag. To add a little joy inside the bag, I'm using the same fabric but with a fun print for the inner open pocket. This is my fabric E, but you could just use fabric D instead. I know this is a lot of fabric and a lot of pieces, but I promise it will all work out. This is the last one. I'm using a waterproof canvas for the lining. It's another tricky one. It can be sticky to sew and no ironing allowed, as heat will melt the waterproof coating. Using a Teflon foot is a big help here. Just take it slow, enjoy the process, or, if you prefer, you can always use a regular cotton instead. It's also possible to convert basic cotton into water-resistant fabric. Front panel time! Let's start sewing. All our fabrics and interfacings are cut and ready. This piece has a gentle curve and a magnetic closure. First, fuse all your interfacings. Remember, the technique is key. Press with the iron, hold for a few seconds, lift it straight up, and then move to the next section. Do not use a sliding ironing motion as this can distort the fabric. Once all the interfacing is fused and the fabric has cooled down completely, then we take our paper pattern pieces and place them back on top of our fabric. This is the moment we transfer all the markings, the notches, the dots, the center points, everything. Doing this after fusing guarantees that all our markings are perfectly accurate and haven't shifted with the heat. Find the circle markings for the magnetic closure on your pattern. We need to transfer these marks to two pieces, the pocket lining, which is fabric D, and the front panel canvas, which is fabric B. Most important tip for this section: use small pieces of decoville for a super strong hold on your magnetic closure. Let's install the socket on fabric B. First, use a ruler to center the snap perfectly on your mark. Then, carefully make small holes for the prongs with a seam ripper. Push the prongs through the fabric from the right side. Now, take your decoville square with matching holes and slide it onto the prongs on the wrong side. Press the washer down and spread the prongs open to secure everything. For a final touch, you can lightly press the area with an iron to help the decoville fuse, but this is optional. Finally, let's start sewing. Place the front pocket and its lining right sides together and sew along that curved top edge. A golden tip for sewing curves. Guide the fabric in a straight line using a marking on your sewing machines as your guide. It makes everything much easier, and this light curve is a perfect place to practice. Press the seam open to push all the fabric out toward the seam allowance. And then cut little triangle notches to reduce bulk. Turn it right side out, give it a gentle press, and add a top stitch using a longer stitch length for a professional look. I chose a contrasting thread for this top stitching to give it that classic jeans look I love. It really makes the details pop against the brown and blue. Now let's install the other part of the magnetic closure. First, double check that your marking is in the right place. Then, just follow the same steps we used before to install it here. Now place the pocket unit right side up on the front panel canvas. The magnets should click together, keeping everything perfectly aligned. Match the top edge with the marked notches. Quickly baste all three edges of the pocket to secure it, then attach the leather piece to the bottom to complete the section. Time for the final step on our front panel, adding structure with fusible foam. This does make things a bit more challenging. If you are newer to sewing, mid-weight fleece is much easier to work with, while still adding nice value. The technique is exactly the same either way. Once your foam or fleece is pinned in place, let's top stitch along that leather seam. Push the seam allowance toward the leather as you sew. Now, here is my little secret. A tiny rub of beeswax or coconut oil on the surface makes sewing through such fabric so much smoother. But that's just between us. Since we can't iron the faux leather, sew a basting stitch all around the four edges of the front panel. This will lock the foam securely in place for all the upcoming steps. Let's start the back panel. On the back panel, we have a zippered pocket which uses a technique that involves opening a clean window for the zipper. There are many techniques for such pockets, but this is my favorite. It looks so clean. As always, we'll start by fusing the interfacings and transferring all the markings from the pattern pieces. Place your back panel fabric A, and your facing fabric D, right sides together, matching the top edges. Pin them in place. Transfer the rectangle shape from your pattern onto the fabric. This is the zipper window. Pin through all layers at the four corners of the rectangle to mark the points. Remove the pattern and use a ruler to connect the marks, drawing the rectangle. Make sure the lines are parallel to the top edge of your fabric. Sew directly on the drawn rectangle. Do not backstitch. For closed shapes like this, overlapping your ending stitches with your beginning ones, lock the seam securely without adding bulk. Here's a useful tip. Count your stitches along the short ends. This ensures both sides are perfectly even. Just so you can see how the fabrics face each other, I'm sewing from this side. It's usually easier to sew from the back side, which is fabric A, but as you can see, I'm struggling a little. Draw a center line between the two long lines and draw triangles at the short edges. Cut along these lines, turn the facing inside out through the opening, and press it to create a crisp, clean window for the zipper. keep the zipper perfectly positioned while sewing, use a textile double-sided adhesive band for temporary hold. Apply it to the zipper tape, place the zipper under the window, and it will hold everything securely in place. Then, simply top stitch around the window to sew the zipper permanently. Don't forget to switch to your zipper foot. It makes sewing close to the zipper teeth so much easier and gives you a really clean finish. We are done with the facing fabric now. Go ahead and trim away the excess, but be careful to leave the seam allowance intact. We might need that for the next step. Now let's attach the pocket linings, one to the top edge of the zipper and one to the bottom. As you sew, make a conscious effort to catch the raw edges of fabric A from the zipper window opening in your seam. You can see these edges clearly on the back side of the panel. This secures the facing neatly and reinforces the pocket. Once the bottom lining is attached, add a row of stop stitching along that seam. This not only gives a clean visual line, but also helps the pocket lie flat. A simple but happy little detail. Oh, and remember that no stitching should be visible from the outside, so be careful not to catch the outer fabric during this step. Normally, I would have made a separate pattern for each side of the pocket. But since we had more than enough pieces, I skipped that step. That's why the bottom part of your pocket lining is a little bigger than the top. I'll be honest, I'm a bit lazy, so I often sew by folding the outer fabric to guide myself. But it's a better idea to draw your seam lines and follow them for more precision. For the top, don't forget to sew small triangles at the corners for a clean finish. And since this is a relatively large pocket, make it robust by sewing a second line of stitches right next to the first seam. This reduces stress on any single seam and adds durability. Now it's time to attach the decorative bottom piece to the back panel. Just like we did with the front panel, sew the leather piece to the bottom edge. Before top stitching, place your foam or fleece under the back panel. Then stitch along the leather seam. Finish by adding basting stitches around all four edges. And just like that, your back panel is ready to go. Time for the handles. Be sure you have transferred the markings to your panels. Fuse the interfacing to your straps. Then fold the long raw edges to meet in the center. Place two straps together with the wrong sides facing. Measure and mark 9 cm, 3.5 inch in from each end. Top stitch along the long edges only till this marks from the short edges. Measure 8 cm 3 inches in from each end. In this center section, fold one side over to wrap around the other, creating a rounded grip. Sew only through this outer wrapping layer. A zipper foot is a big help here with the thickness. Or for a simpler flat strap, just top stitch both long edges for the entire length. Both styles work perfectly. And the final step for the straps. Attach them to the marked areas on both the front and back panels. Now, for the piping. This is totally optional. It makes the seams thicker and can be tricky, so beginners might want to skip it. You will still end up with a beautiful bag. Piping helps define the front and back panels more clearly, and you can always use store-bought piping too. But let me show you how to make your own. Fold your fabric strip over the macrame yarn and sew a basting stitch right along the edge. This stitching will be hidden later. When attaching the piping to your panels, start and stop sewing about 2.5 cm, around 1 inch from each end. Leave the corners free. I learned the hard way that sewing all the way into the corners makes the final seams nearly impossible to sew. So do what I say, not what I did. Time for the gusset. We have side pockets like jeans and D-rings for the shoulder straps here. This curve is a little deeper, so it's great practice for sewing curves. Make sure your pieces are symmetrical. Start by fusing the interfacings and transferring all necessary markings. Next, just like we did on the front panel, sew the pockets front parts and facings right sides together. Press the seam open and cut triangles to reduce bulk. Turn it inside out and add top stitching. notches on your gusset piece, that's fabric B here, and baste around all three edges again. Prepare the D-rings for the straps. Fuse interfacing to the tabs. Use the arrows as your guide. Fold the raw edges toward the center and place wrong sides together. Thread the D-ring and baste the short ends closed. Sew these tabs to the marked areas on the gusset. Attach the top and bottom pieces next. Before top stitching those seams, place the foam or fleece underneath. Repeat all steps for the other side. top stitch along the top and bottom seams where the top and bottom fabrics meet the main gusset. Finally, baste all 4 edges. Now let's prepare the back bottom. Start by basting all 4 edges to secure the foam in place. Next, sew the bottom piece to the gusset parts. For extra strength, top stitch along the seam with the seam allowance pressed toward the bottom. This reinforces the base, which is crucial since it carries the weight of this large bag. While you can easily find shoulder straps in stores, let's make a decorative adjustable strap together. Start by folding the long edges of your fabric strap toward the center and pressing them. Tuck the short ends inward and clip everything in place. Lay the webbing over the center on the wrong side. covering the folded edges completely. Pin it down, then top stitch along both edges of the webbing with the decorative side facing up. I'm using brown thread for the top and blue thread for the bobbin here. Trim the excess webbing and lightly burn the edge to prevent fraying. Next, thread the slider onto the strap, fold the short end under to form a loop, decorative side out, and secure it with a sturdy box stitch. Now thread the long end through the first D-ring on the gusset, back through the slider, decorative side up, and through the second D-ring. Finish another box stitch to create a secure loop. Your gusset unit, complete with pockets and strap, is now ready. Set it aside with your front and back panels. Now it's time for the main zipper. Let's do this. Start with interface your fabric A zipper panels and carry the markings from your patterns. Next, fold just the short edges of both your fabric A and fabric F panels inward by 1 cm, around half inch, and press. Let's make our zipper look a little prettier. On the last 28-30 centimeters, that's about 11-12 inches of the zipper tape, fold the edge under slightly and edge stitch. This just softens the look of the zipper band that will show on the finished bag. But this is totally optional. for the zipper end cap, take your fabric A piece, fold it in half lengthwise with right sides together, and tuck the short ends in by about a centimeter. Sew the long edges together, trim the corners, turn it right side out, and press. You got a neat little tube. Slide the zipper end into this tube, just like tucking it into an envelope, and secure it with some decorative envelope style stitching across the end. Here is how we attach the zipper. Lay your fabric A panel right side up. Place the zipper face down on top, with the tape covering the raw long edge. At the start of the zipper teeth, fold them inward at a 90-degree angle, about 3 mm inside the folded short edge. Pin everything and sew along the entire long edge. Now add the lining. Place fabric F right sides together with fabric A. Enclosing the zipper, sew along that same long edge. Turn the whole panel right side out through the long edge and press. Top stitch along the 3 finished sides, both short edges and the zipper side, using a slightly longer stitch length for that decorative look. Finally, on the opposite long edge, the one that will attach to the back, sew a basting stitch close to the raw edge. And there you have it, your beautiful zipper panel is complete. Now, let's build our lining gusset. This comes in two versions. One simple and one with an organization system. If you are skipping the D rings, this is very straightforward. Just sew your two lining gusset pieces together along the long edge to create one side panel. Repeat to make a second panel, and then you jump ahead to assembling the base. If you are adding the D-rings, first carry all the markings to your fabrics. Next, start making the tabs. Create 6 tabs by folding your fabric D and E pieces toward the center, top stitching them, and attaching D-rings with a basting stitch. For the full organization system, see the link in the video caption. The Mira organizers were designed specifically for the Amara Tote bag. Take 2 gusset pieces, position 2 tabs on the right side of one piece, aligning the raw edges with the marks, and baste them down. Then place the second gusset piece on top, right sides together, and sew the long edge. This will perfectly capture the tabs inside the seam. Repeat all of that to create your second side panel. Attach the remaining 2 tabs to the top and bottom of the panels at the marked places. For both methods, the next step is the same. Gently finger press the seams open. Remember, no hot iron on our waterproof canvas. Finally, to create the lining base, sew the short ends of your 2 long side panels to the lining bottom piece, right sides together. This connects everything into one long continuous loop and your lining structure is complete. Now let's put together the back of our lining, which has some really great organization built right in. First up is the zippered pocket. We will use that same clean window technique we learned on the outside of the bag. Fuse your lightweight interfacing to the fabric B piece, then mark and stitch the rectangle on your fabric D facing. Carefully cut the center and the triangles, push the facing through to the back, press it flat, and then top stitch the zipper in place behind the window. Finally, attach the pocket back to the zipper tape to finish the pocket. Here is a quick recap of the zippered pocket assembly, perfect for catching any details you might want to see again. For padding, fuse the mid-weight fleece to your fabric D sleeve piece. Place the fabric B and D pieces right sides together and sew the top edge. Turn it right side out, give it a good press, and add a line of top stitching along the top. Then just baste around the other 3 sides to hold the front and back together. To assemble the whole panel, position your finished zippered pocket and the laptop sleeve onto the main lining piece, fabric F. Make sure the bottom edges line up perfectly and the side marks at the top are matched. Then baste everything in place around the edges. And just like that, your lining back panel is all set for the final assembly. Now let's move to the lining front panel and add that handy open pocket. As usual, let's begin by carefully transferring all the pattern markings to your fabric pieces. This is one of those steps that really pays off later with a perfect fit. Once everything is clearly marked, we will construct the pocket. Fuse interfacing to both pocket face pieces, then sew them right sides together, leaving a small opening at the bottom. Clip the corners and turn it right side out and press. You can either hand stitch the opening now for a clean finish or leave it open. It will get closed later when we attach the pocket to the lining. Either way, finish by top stitching along the top edge. Here is a useful tip for sharp corners. When you reach the corner, take one diagonal stitch across it. This creates a clean pivot point and makes your corners much crisper when you turn the piece right side out. Just a quick reminder to make sure you have transferred all your markings, including the placement rectangle and center lines, onto your lining fabric. These guides will help you position everything perfectly. Once your markings are in place, position the pocket within the rectangle and pin it securely. Then edge stitch along both sides and the bottom edge to attach the pocket. Double check that the center lines match up, and finally stitch down the middle to create two neat sections. Alright, here's the moment of truth, where everything starts coming together. We'll begin with the lining assembly since it's a bit more forgiving. First, let's attach the gusset to the back lining panel. Pin them right side together, making sure all the raw edges align and the top edges meet perfectly. If you are not using a walking foot, here's a little trick. Add some basting stitches at the top corners and midpoints. It really helps with control. Now sew around the three sides using a longer stitch length first. Then, without moving the fabric, go over the same seams again with a medium stitch. This two-step method reinforces the lining beautifully. Next, let's attach the gusset to the front lining panel. Pin them right sides together, but this time leave relatively big opening at the bottom. We will take the whole bag inside out through this opening. Sew the seam with the same two-pass method, carefully avoiding that opening. For what I like to call a tiny sewing workout. This bag is generous in size, so we will be using our muscles a little here. Consider it part of the craft. Let's start by attaching the zipper panel to our front and back exterior panels. Pin them right sides together, matching those basted edges. Work from the center outwards, but remember to leave about 1.5 centimeter, around half an inch, unsewn at the top corners. This will be a lifesaver against bulk later. Now for the main event, joining the gusset. First, a simple but helpful habit. Open that zipper. Then pin the gusset to the exterior body right sides together. Here's a key tip for managing this big project. Add basting stitches at the centers, top edges, and leather seams. This prevents shifting. Remember, your machine's feed dogs are working harder on the bottom layer than your presser foot is on top. We will sew up the gusset, starting from the bottom center toward the top. Use a longer stitch first, then reinforce with a medium stitch right over it. This two-step approach builds serious durability for your finished bag. Now for the exciting part. Let's bring everything together. Take your lining and tuck it inside the outer bag, making sure the right sides are facing each other. Line up the top row edges and match those side seams perfectly. Then pin all the way around. Sew slowly around top edge. Use your machine sand wheel to guide it over the thicker corners and zipper panel. Once sewn, clip the curves at the corners. Then reach through the opening in the lining and gently pull the bag right side out. This is the magic moment. Tuck the lining neatly into the exterior. Press the top edge and add a final top stitch around the bag's opening for a clean finish. Close the lining opening by hand or machine. And voila! Your gorgeous Amara Tote is complete. Now grab a coffee and admire what you made. If you want to keep your tote perfectly organized, check out my video on the mirror organizers. If you enjoyed this, subscribing and leaving a comment means the world.